Hey folks, MasakoX here. This is something that I think a lot of the world within the Dragon Ball community has forgotten about, but not through pure willingness to do so, but simply because the source material has done a rubbish job in keeping them within relevancy. At least with some characters like Chi-Chi and Yamcha, they at least still interact with the main characters from time to time. This one though, nobody really knew what happened to her outside of maybe some vague sources from books perhaps and a follow-up from a game. That's right, it's launch everybody. Something of which a lot of you out there were very keen on us exploring. But yes, launch. A key staple of the original Dragon Ball series, yet almost completely absent from Z. I think the last animated thing that we actually saw of her, bar the video games, is the Yo Son Goku and his friends return thing. And even then that's obscure, it doesn't even have a dub. Not even Super did anything! And they did a really good job with the slice of life elements of Dragon Ball. Just, they chose to not give Launch a look in. No, not even in Tenshinhan's dojo episode. You could have replaced Yurin with Launch. Her being peeved at being ignored and having to resort to magic or talisman or whatever she could get that she bought to get Penny's attention. Would that have been a better episode? Let's embark on a deep dive of the character and check what she's all about. Does she deserve a chance to come back? What could she offer to modern day Dragon Ball, really? Did Toriyama actually forget her? Or was this just a tidbit of trivia blown out of proportion by the fandom? Before we get to her actual on-page or on-screen debut, let's talk about her origins in the series itself. All we know from this period in time is that she was born in the year age 732, which would make her the contemporary of Vegeta and Broly from Dragon Ball Super, 1 year older than Bulma, Yamcha and Tenshinhan, and about 2 years older or so than Goku, and 4 years older than Krillin. Bonus factoid, did you know Krillin and Hercule were both born in the same year? Yeah, Krilldog is aging very, very differently. Must have been his time in the Shaolin Temple. So when she meets Goku, Krillin and Roshi Launch, basically she had originally met them after being brought to Kame House for nefarious purposes in the guise of a quest, she's about 17. And when we see her for the last time in OG Dragon Ball, she's about 24. She also allegedly has an AB blood type, something that is believed in Japanese culture to represent people with a split personality. Blood types aren't so noteworthy in Western countries aside from the obvious medical perspective. When we first meet Launch in her original debut, Goku and Krillin save her from policemen. They get hoodwinked, unknowingly, by Launch in getting her out of danger, even though she was the culprit, her blonde counterpart being the one who perpetrated the crime. After that, when they take her to Roshi, he tries to take advantage of her in the usual creepy Roshi way that doesn't slide these days, but luckily does get his comeuppance when she switches to her bad side and goes ham on all of them. The bad side that, mind you, is known for extreme outbursts and armed robberies. Good Launch then becomes Roshi's housekeeper of sorts, basically having nowhere else to go, so hey, you got a roof over your head. It's never really made clear if she's an orphan or left home of her own free will. You don't really hear about any of that, so you just have to guess. And we don't see her properly until the Red Ribbon Army saga. Basically, with her being there, she takes over Kame House. She is essentially its owner, knowing it inside and out, and maintaining it when one of Roshi's shenanigans turns against him and forces the creepy old master to do her bidding. Roshi is ultimately saved by Turtle, who causes her to sneeze. A very commonly used plot point to fix things and save the day whenever Launch is the antagonist. Since supposedly each consciousness of Launch is supposed to be unaware of the other one, save from anecdotal or visual evidence. Later on, she is willing to join the team to actually take down the Red Ribbon Army at their base, so she is kind of proactive here. But Goku has already dealt with them, since he basically decimated their HQ rather handily. During the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament, she is supporting her team with her trusty sidearm, trying to take down Master Shen using her own means, but yeah, the Sage just catches the bullets. But a Super suggested that might have actually worked had Launch been just a little bit more sneaky, since even Goku in Super can be hurt by projectiles if his guard were down. So, not really a far-fetched idea of Launch's there. She just went in a little heavy is all. She is more successful in getting the group the seats in the front row though, sneezing often and snapping between her two forms as the script entails. But both iterations of herself are now clearly entrenched in the Dragon Team dynamic. They're not going anywhere. It is in this saga also when Launch, albeit in the anime only, actively saves the day by stopping Pamput's manager Vodka from fulfilling his scheme in having Goku disqualified from the entire tournament. She chases after the man, trying to take the boy away from the arena. Also, during the climactic battle between Goku and Krillin, she roots for Krillin, but compliments them both after the deed for doing a good job. Then during the climactic fight between Goku and Tenshinhan, she tries to stop Chaozu from interfering in the battle, but she gets stopped again by Shen. Seriously, had Shen been stopped or at least indisposed earlier, her act might have actually swung the battle in Goku's favour. You gotta think about that there. She did a lot in that saga. After the tournament, it's clear that she has her eyes set on Tenshinhan. She had the hots for him since Tenshinhan is a man of action and quite stoic. He smoulders, you see. I can see why women would find him attractive. Who knows? Maybe if Vegeta were to be in a certain story female, she might have seen a different side of him. Yeah, that'll be the day, when we hit 750k, so subscribe. Then when Krillin dies tragically, felled by Tambourine, she is the one to take care of his body and ensure that it is preserved, ready for when Shenron could revive him. Side note, by the way, in early Dragon Ball you had to keep the body fresh for that wish to work, or else the wish would have had, issues. She also tries to save Yamcha and actually shoots Tambourine, providing some kind of cover. She even helps fight 3 convicts who try to break into Kame House in the Fracas, and later on wants to fight against King Piccolo herself. But she then, of course, reverts to her good form, and it messes with her plans, because apparently the good side is useless, aside from doing housework. Well, I think Raditz Turn Good Part 7 debunked that, thank you very much. She also nurses Tenshinhan back to health in Kame House after King Piccolo is defeated. In the original Dragon Ball, we see her for the last time when she accompanies Roshi to the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament, where Bulma uses her bad form to scare away the crowd so the friends could find each other more easily. Already a scary sign that she is now seen as more of a tool for other people's convenience. She cheers for her friend, sure, remaining in her blonde form this time throughout instead of switching between the two in the previous tournament saga. Particularly for Goku and Tenshinhan in their climactic fights. Her appearances in Z are a little bit more complicated, since she only appears in the filler portion of Z, not in the manga at least worth speaking of. She appears as early as the Vegeta saga, when she stayed with Tenshinhan and Chaozu. She had obviously robbed a bank to get food for them, going as far as using a rocket launcher to do so. Basically, she tries to steal to get to the lookout, steal from Upa and Bora, and reacts to Vegeta powering up, and finally drowns her sorrows in a bar after Tenshinhan's death at the hands of Nappa. And that's pretty much it. The blonde bombshell, who was known for her tenacious determination and never giving up, had given up and was cast to the side. The next time we see her is in Goku's flashback during his fight against Frieza, and then later people remembering Goku after his sacrifice during the Cell Saga. Her final manga appearance was after the 23rd tournament, in that little extra Christmas bit from Weekly Shonen Jump 1991. And finally, in the anime, she is of course seen with her truck, labelled Lunch Express, to give energy for Goku. And although this is an anime-only scene, apparently it was actually requested by Toriyama himself to be included, to firmly address what Launch had been up to in one simple shot. Still quite vague, but enough to assure fans of hers that she was doing alright for herself. As for what happened after the series, well, please tell us about the lives of the characters after the end of the series, particularly Yamcha, Tenshinhan and Chaozu. First, a word of warning. I'm a considerably arbitrary creator, so I've imagined what happens after for these three for the first time just now. The possibility that I have made mistakes about the characters' backgrounds is great. Proceed with caution. Stoic Tenshinhan mainly does farming in addition to his training. He can split into multiple bodies and grow extra arms, so harvesting the crops goes very quickly. He was found by Launch, who fell in love with him at first sight and had been constantly pursuing his whereabouts, and even reluctantly lived together with her. But she wasn't cut out for farming, and Tenshinhan has no interest in romance, so she left after just a few days. After that, it seems Launch apparently stops in from time to time. Interestingly, Launch also has an alternative origin story in the Sleeping Princess and Devil's Castle movie, That's the second Dragon Ball movie, by the way. In that story, she basically goes to Lucifer's castle in order to steal the sleeping princess, which, by the way, if you were confused, isn't a sleeping person. It's a giant jewel which Lucifer wants to use to power his cannon to blot out the sun. After all the shenanigans in the castle, the boys take her to Roshi, basically mirroring the events from her original appearance, only with a more fantasy-like veneer. She's also briefly seen in Mystical Adventure, where she's surprisingly reserved for her bad side, which is a form that we see her in for most of said movie. She also steals a necklace from a woman, and helps to gather the Dragon Balls when Oolong, of course, and Puar, they're pretending to be General Shen and Emperor Chaozu. Yeah, that's a whole other bag. We also know that in the Dragon Ball game Dragon Ball Online, she made the news in age 779 when she, at the age of 47, had successfully managed to break out of jail for the 100th time. Surely by then you'd have given up trying to hold her, right? I mean, you know she's just gonna get out again. And for many years we had no launch-related content. That is until 2020, when Kakarot was released, and we saw her in quite a few story missions. She can be first seen in a getaway car, but has her proper launch-themed mission following the Saiyan saga. Now you can understand why Kakarot these days is revered in the fandom. Even if the game is not the best game ever, it's a cornucopia of Dragon Ball lore, worth playing through just for the trivia, and filled out gaps in Dragon Ball's history. Basically, her mission begins with all of the hair-changing shenanigans as usual, as Roshi, worried for her safety, and her running after Tenshinhan, sends Gohan to go and find her. But he forgets to tell the boy about the whole hair-changing thing. Basically, Blonde Launch is threatening a man and a woman, whom Gohan mistakes the woman for Launch. And after a bit of a fight, Gohan realizes that the aggressive lady is the real Launch, and the apparent victims had stolen a map of hers. She also notices the similarity between Gohan and his father, which does help the boy realize who he's actually talking to. Supposedly, this map was about to lead her to Tenshinhan, but she goes before the boy can deliver the sad news of Tenshinhan's death at the hands of Nappa. He, however, reports to Roshi about what had happened, only to find out, much to his utter confusion, that Good Launch had already returned to Kame House just miraculously. Later on, she can be found mourning for Tenshinhan, lamenting that the map was useless in the end. Her hope still lies with the others going to Namek to revive everybody, and asks Gohan to promise to not die on her, like Tenshinhan did. Then during the Cell Saga, we learn that she actually participated in hovercar racing, and her name is often found in the record books, because she's actually pretty good. Well, I mean, it's understandable, she had a hover bike. But that's it when it comes to the story content. So what about this legendary Toriyama forgot thing that circles around the fandom? Out of all the forgotten characters, Launch is perhaps the one that is the most well known. So let's take it from the man himself then. Shonen Jump from 2003. This is where things began for the fandom, and the meme took hold. I noticed that Launch disappeared after Raditz came. To tell you the truth, I totally forgot about her at one point. And then I remembered her after a while, and I had to think of a reason why she disappeared. So I made it seem as if she was running after Tenshinhan. So when we take that and the manga into context, him forgetting the character is actually far less dramatic than we tend to make it amongst circles. In the beginning of the Z portion of the story, he simply just wrote her out of the story. In his mind, what was the point of her being there? She wasn't strong. In comparison to the Dragon Team. She wasn't connected to anybody really, because Tenshinhan rebuffed her so often. He had run out of ideas entirely, really, and so he just let her roam Earth, doing her own thing, away from the spotlight, just existing. I guess when you put it that way, that's almost the kindest thing you could do. Just leave her to her own devices. Don't pigeonhole her into a particular role, or just completely destroy her personality. Just let her go. She's free now. And look, we all love Launch as a character, as we believe that there is still a lot of potential for her. But the issue was, and hence why Toriyama dropped her from the main cast, is that she wasn't quite as major as the other members of the main cast were. Yajirobe is still present since he is with Korin, and he is useful as the keeper of the magical senzu beans. The Pilaf gang, brought back to relevancy recently, they're kept around for their usefulness as employees of Bulma because Pilaf is surprisingly intelligent. And it also gives the chance for the Trunks and Mai thing to develop some tension going forward. What could Launch do? In Toriyama's mind, Tenshinhan had already rebuffed her advances, and just to keep her around trying to win his heart is a little bit pathetic, honestly. That's not Launch. She could never be described as pathetic, and you know it. No, the best thing for her is to keep her fate vague. Let the audience decide what she went on to do. And Launch was already struggling with her own identity, not only in the story, but also within the panels of the manga and on the screen. She was a borderline gag character, really, who was quite fitting in the more comedic antics of the original Dragon Ball, but I can understand why, when Toriyama moved on to Z, he couldn't really find a fitting role for her. At the end of her storyline, she kind of just became an accessory to Tenshinhan's story, not really having her own. So honestly, seeing her with her own business as a trucker, looking happy at the end of the Buu saga is good enough. Looking at all the characters that got sidelined in Z, ultimately she got the best deal. Otherwise she would have just been a background extra, and that ain't fair. I feel that modern day storytelling though, in things in the same vein as Super's filler arcs and Superhero, could find some use for her, so maybe there's hope for the future? Maybe she could deal with her duality, or quite the opposite, mentor a younger character who also has to deal with the whole dual nature that they might have. Launch was an interesting character from the classic era of Dragon Ball, and we wouldn't say no in seeing her come back, but unfortunately, the longer we look at her story, the more we realise that she became a victim of the show's changing tone, and times are changing, instead of Toriyama just forgetting, simply. Remember, between her last appearance and the last mention of her in the manga, there are only 2 chapters. So it's not like Toriyama forgot her entirely, but it is clear from this incident that his heart was just not there anymore in terms of writing for her. And honestly, it's actually better that we remember her as her cool self and get excited when we sometimes catch a glimpse of her in the Buu saga and in the video games, rather than Toriyama struggling for ages to find her a place and failing. Maybe someone might do a better job, Toyotaro? Who knows? And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!